Happy Hump Day, Shit Talking Army. I'm Daniel, and there's Logan.
Hey.
And we're just two dads talking about what's going on in our lives and what's going on in the world. So, Logan, how you been, man?
Man, I am been great. Spent a little time yesterday at Top Golf, and that was fun. I actually wasn't getting teased by the blue-haired ladies this time, and so the last time was a little rough. Oh, you hit. So you would never know. I grew up around 7 championship golf courses by my play at Top Golf, but it was a beautiful day, and had some great company, and made some great contacts for business, and it was just really a good day. So I'm doing well. How about you?
That's awesome, man. Doing well. Just been doing quite a bit of networking. Getting really cool connection. Really getting connected with really cool business owners. And dude, I love how Colorado, the business community here is just so active and vibrant, and just really appreciate the state here. It's a great state to do business.
All right. Well, look at Daniel having a little moment. Kumbaya, my Lord. I mean, you just loving you some Colorado business community.
Well, I'm loving the weather.
It is amazing business community. A lot of good people that, I know for me, a lot of good people who have now become good friends. And so, yeah, it really is quite exceptional.
Oh, for sure, man. But yeah, Logan. So we were talking a little bit before last couple of days. You wanted to share something. Is this correct?
Well, Shit Talking Army, I know that you love Daniel and I in our faces, but we've decided to expand our platform, meaning that we're going to start having special guests come on from different walks of life and different ways that we know them, from personal friendships to obviously we're both businessmen here in the local community, as Daniel has said, to business leaders, to people that are working within the community to make the world a better place and to make their community a better place. So with that being said, like I said, I was at Top Golf yesterday, and when I left there, I went over to a client's house. I own a remodeling company, for those that don't know, Praise Construction and Remodeling. And I went to a client's house to check on the progress and, see how everything was going and make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. And while there, the client had his brother over visiting. And so, as I'm working with my crews and making sure everything is going great, I hear this big commotion in the next room. And it was getting kind of heated and really quite belligerent. It was, something was really about to go down. And I hear my client's wife come running into the room screaming, "You guys knock it off!" And so, I mean, and she was really agitated. And so I, later on when, my client came to see me, and as for the debrief of the day and start talking about, the rest of the week and early next week, as far as his project goes, I couldn't help but ask, like, hey man, that sounded like if something was pretty serious. You okay? You good? And he goes on to tell me how, he loves his brother and they were always very, very close. And, but due to them having different viewpoints on politics, he doesn't know if he's going to ever be able to speak to his brother again. He's like, I just don't know if I could be in the same room with him because he infuriates me. And obviously I think it's probably vice versa. And, and he's like, I just don't know if I could do it. So as I was leaving, it got me thinking about what had happened. And I started thinking about my own life, and I started thinking about my own friendships, and I started thinking about, how those friendships and, affect my world and what I think of. And I have, I have lots of amazing friends, and a lot of them are best friends in the traditional sense of the word, best friends. I mean, I have so many people that I could say are included in that category. But when I truly talk about, my two best friends, um, one ended up becoming a lieutenant colonel in the Marines. The other went on to become a DEA agent. And they're two very similar people in a lot of regards, but they're very, very different, especially when it comes to their political leanings. And, and over the years, my one best friend has said to me, I can't believe you still talk to that other guy. And I always say, we don't see eye to eye. We don't agree politically on a lot of things. I think he's a little bit more extreme in his viewpoints than I probably am in mine. He's very well researched and all that. So it's not like he blindly just, you know, takes whatever he's believing in hook, line, and sinker. But he's definitely very much more of an extreme personality in his political leanings than I am. But I tell my other friend, the reason why he will always be my brother, and I love him as much as I can love any man besides my own sons, is because when the chips are down, and I tell this to my kids all the time, when the chips are down, when you're laying on your back, you're unpopular to be around, you you have major issues going on in your life that makes you where you're not the life of the party, you're not fun, it's just nothing positive around you. Your aura just isn't hitting at that moment. Whoever is standing there at that moment with their hand outstretched to you to pick you up, dust you off, get you back on your feet, not because it's going to be any benefit to them personally, but they see value in you. That's who is your true friend. So I want to tell a couple quick stories about my friend and how we became what we call each other today. Still to this day, we refer to each other as crew. That's our little nickname for each other. Again, back to the nickname. So probably Mr. Allfat, I probably did come up with that. But this story is a little long-winded, so bear with me, but I think you'll get the idea. So we're back in high school. And my high school, again, I'm from the Woodlands, Texas. We, at the time, I don't know if it's still this case or not, at the time, we shared a stadium like so many schools around here do with each other. There's one massive stadium. All the schools share it. And we shared our stadium with our rivals, which was about a half hour to 40 minutes north of us, called Conroe High School. The stadium was at their school. So when we had our home games, we would have to bus up there. And obviously when they had their home games, they would use the stadium there. So I was on the varsity football team. And after the games, everyone would, bus back down to our high school. We had a big, humongous high school parking lot, and kids would hang out in this parking lot and, to figure out where they're going to go, who's having what party, or what's going on, or, where it was going to be happening after the games. Like so many schools, go back to the high school, figure it out, go from there. So as I'm in the locker room getting undressed, my best friend comes running in the building and like his ass is on fire. And he's like, and I'm going to change the names to protect the innocent, even though I don't think these people would care, but I didn't get their permission, so I'll change the names. So my best friend comes running in, and he says to me, the gentleman, will call him Bam Bam. Bam Bam's looking to kill me. Bam, we got to go. Got to get dressed. Bam Bam's looking to kill me. And I'm like, what? He's like, get dressed now, because he had his mom's car, and we were gonna take his mom's car out and go wherever that evening. So he's like, you gotta get dressed now, Bam Bam's gonna kill me. And I'm like, well, first of all, how do you know Bam Bam? And he's like, he's gonna kill me. Now, what you have to understand is I grew up, the place was called the Woodlands, and there was the Woodlands city proper, but there were a couple other communities that were which were zoned to feed into the Woodland schools. One was called Shenandoah. There was another one that, of course, a couple others that I'm forgetting the names of them now. But there was this one little strip where my track coach, hey, Coach Green, how you doing out there, sir? He used to live out there, and it's like a little strip that where like the country folks live, folks that had like chickens and a goat or maybe a cow or two or some pigs, little country folk, that had a couple acres, and so not full blown farms and things, but people that had a couple acres, usually had gardens and chickens and pigs and those kind of things. They were able to feed into. Now, Bam Bam was a guy that was from that community, and he was a big human being. I mean, you hear the term country boy strong a lot, and that was him to the tilt. I mean, he was, probably about 6'2", probably about 220 to 240 in that range of solid baling hay, muscle kind of massive man. He wore a lot of denim. I mean, at that time, heavy metal was kind of big, so he might have had like an Iron Maiden jacket on or something. He had kind of a baby face though, and he wore glasses. So he had a kind of a not saying a sweet, like, I mean, because he was a man's man, almost like that dude off of Yellowstone that all the girls like. What was that guy's name off of Yellowstone that the Modelo guy's trying to act like, but whatever. I mean, he was kind of built like that dude, just big old country boy, strong. Now, what made this guy unique is his reputation around school was that this dude could fight. And this dude could knock dudes out. I mean, he had a massive hand like an anvil. Here's my fist. I mean, it's not that big as you can see, but add like an extra fist next to that, like this, that would be like one of his. I mean, he was just a big, huge dude with big old hands. And I had seen him fight on several occasions, other large men, large like himself, and I had seen him put people to sleep. So when my best friend comes running in, now my best friend was on the golf team. He lived on the golf course. He was not built for fighting. Now, I know he grew up to be a lieutenant colonel in the Marines and all that, Johnny Badass, but at that time, he was probably a good $125, $130 if he was lucky. And, on the golf team. And this is before Tiger Woods made golf cool. And, and so he was a little spindly dude. So when he comes running in saying that Bam Bam wants to kill him, I'm like, oh man, you're dead. This is going to be like, leading Bambi on over to the Kodiak Bear and saying, good luck, try to make it. So by the time we come walking out of the locker room, because I'm like, all right, we got to get out of here, because if this dude's looking for you, you cannot find him or else it's over. By the time we come out of the locker room, it had gotten around the school that Bam Bam was going to beat up some sophomore. Bam Bam was like a junior. I think he was a year ahead of us. That he was going to beat up some sophomore that no one ever heard of, and it had a funky last name. And it just got around like, oh, this is going to be the entertainment. This is going to be the precursor for the night. Before we go off and party and all that, we're going to get a fight and then we're going to go party. What's better than that? And by the time we come walking out of the locker room, there's a hush in the crowd, and everyone's like, there he is. That's all you remember hearing. You hear people come run around. So next thing you know, they're pointing him out. We can't hide. And here comes Bam Bam and his 4 friends with him. And all these dudes were big old country boys too. These kind of country boys where their traps start at their ears and kind of go down because they're always baling hay and always like this. I mean, just big old strong dudes, man. I mean, wearing, Wrangler back when that meant something, and boots, and just looking the part. So Bam Bam and his buddies come rolling up, and he's licking his chops because this is his reputation. This is what he's known for. This is how he, how he's carved out a little niche in the school. He wasn't one of the rich kids, or he was, he tried to play sports, even though he was big and strong. He was no good at sports. He wasn't, a Rhodes Scholar or anything of that nature. His reputation solely was fixated around this dude could knock dudes out. And every once in a while, he laid them paws on you. And so that was kind of his claim to fame. So he comes rolling up all happy because he knows he's just about to bounce this little toothpick off the floor. He's going to get a bunch of kudos. And, his only goal in life was hopefully I don't kill him, because that would be bad. But I'm going to beat the crap out of this guy and everyone's going to think I'm great for doing it. So to this day, Daniel, I don't know what possessed me. I do not know. To this day, I've thought about this for years. I've told this story for years, and I'm still in amazement and wonder what made me do what I did next. So we come walking out, crowd comes running up, and this dude and his 4 goons come stepping up. It's just me and my boy. Now, I graduated high school. I'm 5'9". I graduated high school at 165 pounds. So, I'm in my sophomore year. So I'm probably, my buddy's $120 to $130. I'm probably about $145. I'm not very big either. Now I was an athlete. I was always wiry but strong. All that kind of stuff. But needless to say, I wasn't very big. And this guy comes up to get my boy, and for the life of me, again, I don't know what made me do this, but I jump out in front. And something comes out of my mouth that my brain is like, what? But what comes out of my mouth is, hey, if you want him, you got to go through me. And my brain is like, who said that? Bobby, who down there is talking for us? We did not think this one through. That's not what we want to do at all. This is not your fight. This is not your fight. That's Bam Bam over there, and Bam Bam can fight. And what had made you say that? Now, at that very moment, when those syllables barely have left my mouth, you hear a roar and a call go out. It's almost like in the movies where, you would see the different tribes. They would have someone up on the hill and they would light a fire, and then you'd look down the way and there'd be another fire lit and another fire lit down, where they're sending signals to each other. That's kind of how it felt. No longer was it Bam Bam versus this guy no one ever heard of off the golf team. Now it became, my middle name's Joseph. A lot of people still refer to me as such. That, and I'm not going to sit here and be all conceited and say, well, I was popular and all this. I don't know. I don't get into all that. I was well known and well thought of in certain circles. Certain people did like me, as we could tell from the story of Mr. Allfat. Maybe not all people liked me, but I was well known and well thought of in certain circles. So the call goes out. It's Bam Bam versus Joseph Jordan. And I tell you what, if you weren't already kind of standing around looking for the slaughter, it went from, oh, Bam Bam's going to slaughter some freshmen. Some people are interested in it. Most people could care less, to now it's Bam Bam versus Joseph Jordan. And all you hear is, you hear the stomping of people running from everywhere, because now it became a must-see event. This popular athletic guy against this guy that wears a lot of denim and Iron Maiden. And, we were the total antithesis of each other. I'm kind of a preppier fellow, wearing penny loafers at that time, kind of deal, where this guy, again, is probably wearing boots and again, heavy denim. We couldn't look any more polar opposite than we did. Probably like Rocky. Probably like Drago and who was the guy that Apollo? Apollo all in the suits, looking clean, and then here's this big, massive man, looking like he all he does is just chew nails and eat glass every day. So now we're face to face. Now, as a little guy, I don't know if you've ever been in a fight in your life, Daniel. You don't look like a guy that's had too many brawls, but
2
the
times.
one thing you got to know is, as a little guy, when you are facing a big guy in a fight, the one thing you do not want to have happen is have your world shrink. You don't want to be caught in a phone booth with a big guy. You want to have moved to, like Muhammad Ali would say, float like a butterfly, dance, sting like a bee. He needed to float. because he had big dudes like George Foreman, them woof, woof, throwing them haymakers. He needed to be able to move and dodge and, duck and weave and rope a dope. And, he needed some space to do what made Muhammad Ali great, because you sure didn't want Mike Tyson up under you in those ribs. Like, you remember that Mike Tyson knockout? You're too young. You probably don't remember it. But for those of you out there that remember that video game, you don't want Mike getting up under you, coming at them ribs, because he was going to knock you out. Well, when the rest of these folks came a running, that phone booth shrank down real quick. Now I'm standing there again, saying to myself, how am I in this position at this place and at this time? I glance back just for a second. My best friend is now melted into the crowd. He's no longer an entity. He's just like a little face, that you see peering like behind people's asses and shit. He ain't even standing straight up. He's like just looking like what's going to happen. And so, as I'm standing there and I'm like, oh my God, I'm facing Bam Bam. I'm about to get hurt. And I say to myself, okay. You got one or two choices. Now, this is I think probably the first time I realized I was a pretty good salesperson. I said that you got one or two choices. You either got to quickly diffuse this situation quickly, or you're going to have to start throwing fists as fast as you can, as quickly as you can, and just pray to God. It's like David versus Goliath and the slingshot and the stone. And, and when he tilts the helmet back, that stone just happens to hit the perfect spot and Goliath goes down and David reigns supreme. You better hit that dude with all you have, and you better catch him flush and right and ready to go, because if you miss or you don't hit him flush and you just sting him and don't hurt him or don't nothing, he's going to get up and he literally is going to beat the living hell out of you. That's your only option. So I say to myself, okay, we got to quickly diffuse this. So I yell over to him like, bam, this is what we're going to do. Kind of talking like in that Hulk Hogan voice, brother, eat your vitamins, take, I was like, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to consider it a personal favor if you let him slide this one time. I said, now, if he ever gets around you ever again or makes you upset ever again, I personally will beat him down for you. And whatever's left, I'll drag it over to you and you can finish off the carcass. I said, but if not, me and you right now, what do you want to do? Now, they always say that God sends you angels when you most need them. Now remember, I had 4 big ass country boys right behind him, and one dude I knew didn't like me very much because over some girl or something. We ended up having a problem later on, but I knew he didn't like me, and the other guys were just there for the show. But we had Bam Bam, and we had 4 big Bam Bam looking dudes behind him. I'm by myself, so even if I get Bam Bam, there's not really anyone to say that these 4 dudes aren't going to jump in and whip the tar out of me and grab me up and Bam Bam finish me off. I was way outnumbered. Well, at that time, at that very moment, I look up and, I'll call him Preacher Man because he grew up to become a preacher. But one of my buddies that also grew up out in that area by Bam Bam and them, he and I were real close. And I mean, we used to run around together and all that. And he looked like, I used to call him Clark Kent, because he looked like a high school science teacher even back then. He was, the glasses, very nonchalant, very kind of skinny. He just looked like a mild-mannered guy, someone that should be selling you insurance or something. One of them kind of looks like Timothy at our networking group. Just a good guy. You can't think of Timothy fighting anybody. Just a good guy. But this kid could fight. And he was known to have a short fuse, and he was like a Wolverine. He'd take on bigger dudes and all. He had a lot of inner anger issues. You go to his house, he'd have like holes punched in the wall and, dents in his door. I mean, he had I'm glad he grew up to be a preacher, because Lord knows he needed the Holy Ghost and the Holy Spirit all up in him, because he was just, he had some family troubles, and he did not mind knuckling it up. Well, when he sees what's going on, next thing you know, he comes and stands behind me. Then you look up and you see where some of the athletes are like, wait a minute, that's one of us. That's one of our boys out there. That's one of the guys on the team. And next thing you know, you see a couple, 3, 4 football players come stand behind me that I was really close with. So now we're looking like, okay, I'm gonna have a little bit of peace of mind. Like I'm probably still about to get bounced off this concrete by this massive man, but at least I don't have to worry about his boys jumping in and jumping me, because now I got my back up. And so Bam Bam's looking at all this fall into place too. And for just a split second, I could see it in his eyes. He's thinking, which he wasn't known much for thinking, but he's at this moment, he's thinking. And he's thinking to himself at this moment, I came over here to have a guaranteed kill. But it's almost like the lion showing up thinking he's going to meet the gazelle, and he shows up and he looks like, oh my God, that's a Kodiak bear standing there. Even though I'm a little guy, so I don't know what that would be equivalent to a little guy, but not as easily to kill as that gazelle that I came here to eat. Something formidable is standing there. And he's thinking to himself, now my reputation is I knock dudes out and I'm a good fighter. Now, the guy standing over there, he's smaller than me, but I was kind of known to be I was a defensive specialist for the most part. I like to hit. I was really strong for my age. I broke the freshman bench press record and things of that nature. I was a good athlete. I was I ended up going off to be a Division I athlete. So I was a good athlete. I was well liked. I was well known. So if this man and his reputation gets beat by this guy and his reputation, then he takes a major blow. He takes a major, like, oh my goodness, I can't show my face at school on Monday because now I'm embarrassed that I just got beat up and everything I'm known for just went down the drain because this other guy who has his own reputation and he's well thought of in his own deal. Now I was a poor kid too. We were both poor kids. That's what sucked is, only child, grew up in an apartment with my mom. So, I wasn't I didn't fit in any more than this dude fit in. I just actually lived in the city where he lived on the outskirts, but we were both in the same community. We were both in that, we really shouldn't probably belong in this community. So he's thinking about it, and you just see all at once he comes to a decision. And right then and there, I'm like, okay, bombs away, because if he makes one flinching move, it's over. Right before I'm about to swing on this dude, he does this. He looks to the side, and he's like, if you ever get around me again, I'm going to kill you. And I was like, yes, Chuck, you can have him. And so the whole crowd kind of clapped. They were like, boo, come on, because some people wanted to see the fight. Ooh, like, come on, fight, and he and his crew turned around and walked off, and my heart got to go right back into my chest because it was in my stomach. And so, of course, I told my friend for, all these years, still to this day, you're lucky I saved your ass. You would have died that day. You had never grown up to be the lieutenant colonel if it wasn't me saving your ass. Now, that's half the story. Other half the story, let's skip a couple of years ahead. Now we're in college. I went to the University of Montana. He went to a local school there in Texas. And we would call each other from time to time and check up on each other. And he was part of a fraternity. So usually when I would call, he'd be drunk at his fraternity house. And he'd be like, shh, everybody be quiet. It's my best friend calling from Montana. And of course, everyone thought Montana was on the other side of the world. And they were like, what, Montana? And quiet. And so, the guys would usually by the end of the night, right before we get off the phone, they'd all be chanting, come back to Texas. Come back to Texas. It was really kind of cool. It was really special. It was funny. But we'd be on the phone and we'd be talking. And so, I didn't live the life of a normal college student. After my freshman year in college, I wanted to get my own apartment. And so I expressed this to my mother. And she said, hey, if when you run track runs longer into the summer than most students are out of school at that point. It runs a couple weeks later into the summer. by the time track is concluded for the year. And so my mother, I'm talking to her, expressing how I want to get my own place. And so of course she's thinking, well, I ain't got money to support you, me, and all that. If you want to get your own place, you're gonna have to get a job. But she's like, don't, no need of coming back here to Houston, because all the burger flipping jobs are probably already gone by now. You probably best staying up there and seeing if you could find a job there. So that's a whole another crazy story how that came about. So I won't tell it at this time, but I ended up getting a job that blessed me to make over 3 times the average state income of the state I lived in. So I lived quite well while in school. But there's certain times that, my coworkers and I didn't, see eye to eye. Now, of course, my coworkers then are my age now. They're married, they have mortgages, they have kids, they have responsibilities. I'm 19 years old on a track scholarship at the school, making all this perceived money, being very arrogant about it. I mean, I'm sure I was just kind of a dickhead, to be honest, just immature, not to be mean spirited or nothing, but I was really good, and I was, I was making great money, and I was, the type of dude that would say to the girlfriend, hey, you want to go to Seattle for the weekend? And because that was like the big city near us, and be like, all right, let's go buy a couple tickets, fly out to Seattle and get a hotel room and go kick it in Seattle for the weekend and come back. It was no big deal. You want to go to Mexico, or whatever you needed. I mean, I had a couple cars. I rented a house to myself. I mean, I was living well, new furniture, doing it. I was not living like an everyday college student. I mean, I sometimes wish like my quality of life was pretty banging back then. I wish I can go back. But these folks would see this and they would be pissed because they're trying to make their mortgages. And I have kids now that are in club sports and travel basketball, and we just finished football season. All that stuff's expensive. I mean, it super is. So I can understand if I work with someone now, half my age or more, that's coming in and they're making all the dough and are flaunting my face in it, I wouldn't like them very much. So every once in a while, they would get together with the manager, who they all knew each other since they were 16 and grew up together, working at this one store. And they would complain to the manager. So the manager, to humble me, he would just cut my hours down to nothing. So normally I usually work like 5 to 9 during after school and all the rest of that. And so next thing you know, I would go from maybe my little 15 to 20 hours a week, 18 hours a week. I'd have one shift, 5 to 9 on the schedule. And I'm like, what is this? And even though I was very financially responsible, I paid all my bills, had no credit card debts, no nothing, but I had a little bit of a lifestyle too going at that point. I mean, the joke of it was, if we were down at the local watering hole together, if I had money in my pocket, the party didn't stop. We did it big and we did it hard. And so even though I had no bills, there was times that when he would do this, I'd be short of cash on something because I'd pay all my bills. And at this particular time, I was short on my rent by a few $100s. And I was so embarrassed, and I couldn't call home because at this time as soon as I got this great job and started doing so well, I started sending money home to help support my mom, help take care of her. My dad was never in my life until now. He is as an adult. That's a different story. But at the time, couldn't call dad for anything. Didn't have a rich uncle. So I'm on the phone with my best friend, and I'm sitting there, and I just happened to say to him, hey man, you don't happen to have some money, do you? And he's like, well, what's going on? What do you need? And I'm like, my pride jumped up, and I said, man, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm be all right. He's like, no, what's going on? I'm like, no, man, I'm good. I'm good. And he's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'll be just fine. I'll be just fine. Well, so we got off the phone, and then that evening there was a little watering hole in town that you paid $5 and you got to drink all the crappy beer you could handle. And so I went out that evening, and I decided to use probably one of my last $5 I had to my name, and I decided to partake that evening. And I, in great wisdom of that age, I was probably about 22 at the time. Um, I decided to have a little bit, and I had a little bit more than I should have, and I was pretty hammered. So next day, I'm laying on my couch, and I hear a knock at the door, and I look up, and there's a guy standing there with a Federal Express uniform on, and he's got an envelope in his hand. Now, at this point in time, this is before, all the wiring became popular, wiring people money or Zillows and none of those things were about. So if a guy was standing there with one of these envelopes in their hand that you had to sign for, that was typically really bad news. Like you were getting served or something, something bad was going to happen. If you weren't expecting an envelope usually did not mean good news. So I look up and the guy says to me, "Are you Joseph Jordan?" And of course, my first thought is, why is my front door open? Why am I laying here on the couch? And yes, I am Joseph Jordan, I hear my mouth say. And the guy's like, "Sign here." And so I sign for it. He hands me the envelope. He leaves. I rip open the envelope, and all that's in it is a check with a sticky note on there that says, "I hope this helps." And even though I never told my best friend what I needed or why I was in anguish, and he knew that I always lived well and did well, and money wasn't ever and typically an issue for me at that point in time, but he happened to write a check, and he had to, and this is when you had to overnight things, so you had to pay like $20, which was money back then, to overnight it. So he overnighted it, and the check that was in there was for the exact amount that I was short on my rent, even though I never told him how much it was. And all he wrote on the sticky note that he attached to was, "I hope this helps." And, he never brought it up. We never talked about it. It was never like, "You have to pay me back." And then it wasn't until we were into our adult lives that we were hanging out one day, and I was like, "Oh my God, I never gave you back your money." And I, went over to the ATM and withdrew the few $100s it was or whatever. I was like, "Here you go, bro." But it was never, it was never a thing. It was just, he saved my ass, because at the time, like I said, a whole house, 2 dogs, couple cars. If I was, and these people I rented from, this agency was hardcore. If you didn't come with your rent, they were kicking you out. And they always wanted my house anyway, because it was a house, and here I'm a college student, and they wanted someone more long-term in there. And, so they were always trying to figure out ways to get me out. So they would have definitely put me on the bricks, and I would have had no place to go with all this stuff and 2 dogs and the whole deal. And so, that's what friendship means to me. Again, me jumping up in front of this, Goliath of a man, even though I'm not very much bigger than my buddy, and, and probably couldn't fight any better than he could, really. But, me jumping up and saying, "Hey, if you want him, you got to go through me." Him coming, when I'm being starved out by this manager and these other, co-workers, and they're trying to humble me and teach me a lesson and knock me down a peg or two. Him coming through for me and just knowing the exact amount I need to, keep on keeping on. Those are the people that you can say, "Hey, that's my real friend right there." And so when my one buddy says, "I can't believe you're still friends with him," I'm always thinking, we don't have to agree politically. I mean, we could be totally on the upper opposite sides. We could send each other articles on this and articles on that and this, that, and videos and that. And, most time we laugh about some things. Sometimes we agree to disagree and go our separate ways on it. But at the end of the day, he knows he's one phone call away from me, and I'm one phone call away from him, and we'll drop everything and we'll be right there. So the reason why I'm telling you these stories here today is to not just walk you through my little memory lane of high school, but is to say, when we bring people onto the show, especially, in my case, if I bring on people and I introduce them as a dear friend and I've known them a long time, these are people in my village. Each one of them will be vetted in some certain way, similar to this story that I've told here today. They will be vetted, and you will know for sure that these are my ride or dies. These are people that, we've been through it, still going through it. Until death do us part, we will, be there for each other, even though we don't always agree. We haven't always gotten along. Sometimes we've had some spats where, we had to go to our individual corners for 6 months, 8 months, and then be like, all right, man, I'm ready to talk to your punk ass again, or vice versa. And so when we start bringing on guests, these are the kind of people, shit talking army, that we're going to bring on. People that what they say, what they mean what they say, and when they tell you it, you can take it to the bank. So Daniel, again, I'm sorry I hijacked another one. It wasn't my intention to do so. I really didn't mean to drag those stories out that long, but anything that you'd like to say about, because I know you have some guests that you're excited about bringing on, anything that you want to let the crowd know that they can look forward to?
Yeah, just have some really cool business friends coming, as well as just friends that I've grown up with. Really cool stories that they have to share. So, and Logan, just for what it's worth, I really enjoyed those stories. Those were through thick and thin, friends will make it through,
Yeah. Well, Shit Talking Army, as we like to say, like, subscribe, comment. Also, one thing that we don't say, which we should, hit that notification bell. So when we do another show, you can get notified and stop texting me and saying, hey, when's your next show? Be like, I just shot it yesterday. Get the notification bell. And please, put your comments in here. Tell us about your best friend stories. How'd you become best friends? Or what does friendship mean to you? I'm an only child, so my friends become like surrogate siblings to me. So I take friendship very, very serious, and I'm the type of person that will, just go to the mattresses for you if I see value in you, and I love you dearly. I will, do whatever I can do, sometimes to a fault. When that phone rings at 3 a.m. and it's a good girlfriend from college or something calling, the missus doesn't necessarily always like that, but she understands. My mother told her right up front that if you don't, understand that this guy, my son has a lot of deep seated friendships, a lot of them with females as well as males, and they mean a lot to him. If you can't handle that, you should probably walk away today. She decided to stay. So every once in a while we do get that 3 a.m. call, but we try to limit those as much as possible for her sanity and for my sleep. So, but Daniel, it's always a pleasure to see you, brother. It's always good to consider you a dear friend as well, and enjoying doing this show with you. But for all of the Shit Talking Army out there that have stories of their own that they would love to share, we would love to see them. And Daniel, where can they email us at if they want to get a hold of us via that way?
Yeah, so it's regular form, but 2dadstalkingshit@gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Well, until next time, you got the 2 dads talking shh, and we're out.